Hey everyone, it's Elo. I hope that you're doing well. In today's tier video, I am really in the console old school gaming mode. I've recently actually I got to write some articles about the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and I've got my shirt on to represent that, and I've just been in the mood to play on these old consoles. I have yet to because I've been working, but I thought, it would at least be fun to look at them together and just kind of explore the genesis of console games. So I really don't know why I have this. I acquired it many years ago. So first and foremost, we have, in my collection at least, the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, which has Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt in it. And this big ol' bulky machine was, I believe it came out in 1986 maybe. And at the time it was obviously like super cool and had a lot of great games on it that people have come to love. The controllers have very long cords. I'm sorry, by the way, if you can hear my neighbor upstairs walking around. I didn't think she was going to be home. And it's really easy to hear that kind of stuff. So she also has a cat that sometimes like scampers across the floor, and it makes such a loud noise. So hopefully that will stay to a minimum. But here is the NES controller, which was just a pretty basic rectangle. It has a select and start button in the middle, and then your A and B button, and your four-way little thumb pad over here on the side. And these are just plastic. They kind of remind me of a remote control now for like the television. But they were all you needed at the time. So that is the oldest console that I have, and I actually have two of them. I don't know why. Actually, I remember why. And it might actually have to do with that gas mask too. I had a friend right after high school who at one point I think left some consoles at my apartment. I think. And that might also be his gas mask. I'm not sure. The first place I lived right after high school was a rented house. Well, I was, when I graduated, I was kind of bouncing around, staying at other people's houses. And then I got the house that I rented, and that's when I met all these people, including this guy, and they were all drug addicts. And then I got a different apartment like a year later and pretty much stopped talking to all of them. But he was one of the few that I kept seeing occasionally, hanging out with. And he was having issues. He lived with his grandparents who lived like 2 streets over from me. So sometimes when he was in between living situations, he would leave stuff at my house. I believe that these 2 controllers I'm about to show you were also things he probably left behind. Oops, sorry. So this first one is the NES Max controller, and you'll easily be able to see the differences. This one is more of the shape that we kind of recognize today rather than the flat square. This one does have your buttons, but also has a sliding component that the regular standard controller did not. It does have your A and B buttons, and it also has these 2 turbo buttons, and then of course your select and start buttons in the middle. One thing I will say about these controllers is that they are very lightweight. And I kind of almost missed them being the way that they were. But I understand why they had to get bigger and bulkier. I'm so sorry if there's a lot of cuts, by the way. My upstairs neighbor is not cooperating. It sounds like she's literally trying to rearrange her furniture, of course, as soon as I start filming. And there's been a couple like sirens and crap like that. So yeah, this controller is definitely not mine. I don't recognize it. I don't know what this went to, if it was a Sega or if it was a NES or if it was its own thing. It does look like it plugs up maybe to the SNES, but it has crazy buttons. It has R, X, Y, A, L, B. Has a left and right bumper, so this must have been later in the 90s. It has a slow button, A, B, X, and Y, and your 4-way pad, along with, of course, your select and start button. So this one obviously has a lot more going on to it, and you can feel that in its weight. It's much more dense than the other. Man, my refrigerator just cut off and I didn't realize that it was like running, so I wonder how loud that's gonna be. This, hopefully this is not terrible and I have to refilm the whole thing, but I thought this through, and I guess I didn't know. I've never recorded out here in this area, so more unexpected things than I anticipated. And if this ends up being really crappy or sounding weird, I will refilm it at some point. So I'm going to have to move some things really quick to get my SNES out. Okay, so here we have the dirty old NES. And this is the console that I have most of my memories on. It came out in 1990, technically. 91 was when it was really available here in America. And yeah, the controller we just looked at looks like it might fit into here. And I do know that I remember like a drawing game that I had this, I don't want to call it a tablet, but like a weird screen controller thing for, so maybe that controller is something similar, but it didn't have a Nintendo brand on it. Anyhow, this is the Super Nintendo, and your cartridges go in the top. You have your power buttons, your reset button, and your eject button in the middle. 2 players at a time, and sometimes a lot of the time, really, from the games that I played, most of them were kind of single player, or you had to rotate. You weren't really playing at the same time. There were games where you would, but most of the ones I played were single player or take turns with 2. And I had an older brother, so of course he was always player 1 and he was always Mario, and I was always player 2 and Luigi, which at the time I had some grudges about, but I tried to champion Luigi now since he was there for me. And Super Mario Brothers was definitely the most impactful game on me as well. It came with the system when you purchased it, and that was probably a pretty good thing because according to some of the research that I've done for one of my recent articles, parents were kind of really pissed that they had purchased the NES and all of these games to go along with it over the years, and now they had to buy a whole new console, and they felt like they were being scammed. Obviously now it's something that we don't even think twice about. We know that we have to upgrade our electronics over time because the technology gets better, and we just kind of accept it. But at the time, this was a much more radical thought, and so I think it was a good thing that this came with at least one game. I feel like it would have been a lot worse if it had come with no games, because at least this way, if you got it for your kid for Christmas or something, they would have something to play without you having to invest more money. What is she doing? I really don't know, and I don't know how loud it is on the microphone. So the Super Nintendo obviously holds a lot of memories for me, and it was really the first console that I played a lot. I played the NES like in retrospect, probably 10 years or so after it was initially released / popular, and even the Super NES I didn't play exactly when it came out because I would have been 1 at the time, and as great of a gamer as I am, I definitely wasn't able to play when I was 1. I did start playing though when I was pretty young. I'd say probably 3 or 4, and then we had a computer, and by the time I was 5 or 6, I was constantly playing one or the other. I played a lot of educational games on the computer, and I played a lot of like challenging games, I guess, more entertainment based and harder to complete games on the Super NES. And of course, recently they remade this system, and it's like a fraction of the size. It looks really cute, and definitely whenever I have the coin for it, I'm going to get one. I think it comes like preloaded with some of the games, and if there's one thing that people love and loved about this system, it's the games. They're just really good. They're captivating, they're fun to play. Some of them have really cool storylines. The graphics were really cool. I wouldn't have known this offhand, but because of my research, I also know that this had like 32,000 colors, I think, color possibilities, and could display 256 colors on the screen at a time. And the Sega Genesis was like 500 or 600 colors total, and just a couple like in the 20s or 30s, I think, with how many colors could be on the screen at a time, or it was only a 2-digit number. So on the Super Nintendo, they were able to do a lot more artistically, obviously, than they had been able to do before. And this is a 16-bit machine, but they were able to make things look three-dimensional by illusion, essentially, and like flipping and moving pieces of the environment. And eventually they did come out with the Super FX chip, which did actually make things 3D, so that was like huge. And another thing is the sound chip, I guess, that's in the SNES. It was just really good for the time, and a lot of the games have good soundtracks that people remember and like. So that was that. I'm just gonna leave this open for now instead of going through the hassle of closing it all and trying to put it all back quietly. Although, what's the point of me being quiet when my neighbor won't be quiet to save my life? So next, of course, was the N64. This is my actual N64 from back in the day, and that I'm pretty sure is my Super Nintendo, but things get traded around a lot when you don't realize how valuable they are, so that might have been one that I acquired later on. I don't remember them. So this obviously looks a lot different. They've gone with the black color rather than the sort of pasty gray that they had before. You still have the loading for your decks on the top. And now we have 4 controller spots, so you can play with up to 4 people at one time. And a lot of the games were designed as multiplayer games. So even though you still had some of your, classic solo games like Zelda, you now also had Diddy Kong Racing and Wave Racer and a lot of the sports games and things that you could play multiplayer. So yeah, this was the little N64, and it just has an on and off and a reset button, which is very important, as is the blowing technique. comes to the controllers, the cords were noticeably shorter than their predecessors, which I don't know why they decided to do that, because I think having the long cords was nice. But this is dirty, so sorry, excuse me, it's very dusty. But these were the new controllers, and there was much debate over holding it like this versus holding it like this versus holding it like this. I was always like this. I don't know if that was right or wrong or whatever, but it worked for me. So on this controller, there's a lot of new stuff going on for the time. We've got the bumpers again, which I believe the Super Nintendo was I think I have. I don't know where the Super Nintendo controllers are. I'll have to find them at some point. It's going to be important if I want to play. But I'm pretty sure the Super Nintendo were the first ones to have the bumpers, and then they were carried on into the N64 controller. You have your A and B button. Now you have your C pad over here, which has 4 more buttons on top of your pad. Your start button in the middle. We no longer have a select button. And now we also have the joystick, which became very important for a lot of mini games and caused me a blister in the middle of my palm. And we also have the Z button, which was one of my favorites for whatever reason. I guess because it's so easy to like hit. We have the area here for your memory cards and rumble packs, so your controller could react to what was happening in the game, which was cool. I don't know whether or not the FX chip did that with the SNES. I don't remember. I think this was the first time I had a controller that did the rumble feature, but that doesn't mean it was the first one. Oh my goodness. Hopefully that doesn't fall, because it will scare the bejesus out of me. So I just wanted to show some of the games that I have. Wave Race, which I fucking hate. This game was incredibly frustrating for me, and I was constantly racing into walls. It pissed me off. The controls were so sensitive, and it was one of those games where you had to like be very subtle with your movements, and I was like a balls to the wall kind of player, so it was difficult for me to bring in some patience and just tap and move gently. That was not my style. Mickey's Speedway USA, which if you've never played this game, it's surprisingly fun. Obviously it's a racing game. The tracks are a little different than the ones that you might be used to in Mario Kart, so I guess that's what made it have its own little like element. Vigilante 8 Second Offense. As far as I remember in this game, I pretty much just drove around and just did dumb shit. I don't think I ever really like played the game. But this one was my older brother's, the Ken Griffey Jr. Slugfest. He played that a lot. I never did. Bomberman Hero. Another classic in my opinion. Banjo-Kazooie, which I remember how excited we were when Banjo-Tooie was coming out. Just a fun, silly game. This is one of my favorites that not everyone had, or I don't say that as like an elitist thing, but I mean in the sense of it was more obscure, I think, and that's Snowboard Kids 2, which was just, it's fun. The characters are like very over animated and goofy, and they have like personalities that are very distinct, and you're just racing but on snowboards. And when you get to the bottom of whatever track you're on, there was a ski lift at the bottom that would bring you back up to the top for your second and third lap usually. And then the final time you'd go down the track, there would be like a checkered ribbon, because it was the end and whoever touched that first was the winner. The tracks were pretty long too. It's not like it was just a short little loop. They were pretty intricate. Of course, Mario Kart, and I don't feel like I really need to say anything about that one. Other than that, it was the first time I really like hated my brothers. Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Plenty of Goldfinger, was that? Who sang that song? I was like, well, here I am doing everything I can. It was called Superman, and I think it was by Goldfinger. It starts off with like a drumming. I love just dicking around in Tony Hawk and like just seeing how many points I could get come up on the screen. This is one of my absolute favorites. Diddy Kong Racing. This is the first game that I really sunk hours into by myself. I loved it, and I wanted to beat every map to the best of my like ability. So I spent a really long time just running those maps over and over again until I had completed them to the utmost degree of my capability. And there was a couple of them, one I'm thinking of in particular, where you'd end up flying rather than driving, because sometimes you'd switch and you'd have like a water vehicle or something that could fly or something that could drive. And in this one part where you have to fly through this cave, it was always the most difficult part. Transitioning to that and making sure you went over this little ledge to hit like a speed boost or something was really difficult, and I spent so much time like perfecting that so that I would always beat everyone at that part. That was like where I got my advantage. This game I really want to play again because my younger brother pretty much held this game hostage, and I don't think I ever really got to play it that much. Paper Mario. But I remember being really interested in it, so I really want to play it by myself. Oh man, Super Mario 64. I'll tell you, I hope these are focusing, by the way. I'll tell you, I remember so many things, but like the first time that I went into one of the portraits, or there was like a water one, I think it was a water one that had like a hidden entrance or something like that, and I just remember being shocked when finding these things. I remember the icy, snowy one really well too. And of course the one that was like outside with the chomp chomp. And just finally beating all of them and seeing the story like complete. Yeah, these are like some of my, this was the first time I was playing like 3D games like that on a console, because they were very different than what the 16-bit graphic looked like. One complaint that I read online from some critics was the thought that the N64, because it had these new graphics, it kind of trailed in the like the maps weren't as intricate. There's a lot of open space, and when I think back on it, that's pretty true, I guess. Like there wasn't a whole lot layered in like there was in Super Nintendo, but I feel like Super Mario did a pretty good job of feeling full. Yeah. Another one of my all-time favorites, Bust a Move 99, which is if you have a Windows computer, I think it comes pre-installed Windows 10 with Bubble Witch Saga, which that's just an easier version of Bust a Move. And all the characters are like hella Japanese. They're cute. And then Zelda. Majora's Mask. God, I think this was the second one, right? Because I remember, I don't know, I just remember the storyline not including that mask the first time. It was with the, I mean, you always had your ocarina, but, and then there was that field with the horse, and you learned to like ride the horse. I don't know, I don't think that was this one. I think that might have been Ocarina of Time or something like that. And the rest of them are just Mario parties, I think, which I shouldn't say just, because I love them too. But my camera battery is about to die, and the only system I really have left to show is the GameCube, which there's no, I love the GameCube. I still love it. Double Dash is probably my favorite racing game, maybe of all time. And I still have a lot of those games. Granted, Frida went ham on a lot of them one day when she was pissed off about Reggie. So, yeah, a lot of the cases are ruined, but the games are still good. And I think GameCube was kind of its own little piece of magic. It felt very different than the N64 in a lot of ways. The graphics were like a huge upgrade, and the games felt a lot more interactive, I guess. But yeah, anyway, I hope that you enjoyed talking through these game systems. Hopefully this wasn't too loud with the background noise, and I will see you in my next video.